Star Wars lately has been uninteresting. It's been full of concepts I can't engage with, like the Empire again, or the Sith again, or the Empire again, or maybe if we're being risky, the Empire again. Acolyte is in full swing as of the making of this video, and that's set in a different era and has a different focus than the movies, I think. However, I haven't seen it, so I'll not speak on it. Full disclosure, I've been a Star Wars fan since I was a wee boy. Legends was the old canon before Disney, and I ate it up. At least, book-wise. In contrast, I actually haven't seen any of the new Star Wars shows other than the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. For one reason. Their narrow focus. And I know, Andor is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'll check it out one day. Maybe. My point is that Star Wars is big. Bigger than George Lucas, or Kathleen Kennedy, or even Babu Frik. Yet we always revisit the same era.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Same story of rebels and empire. Same binary of good and evil. I want to challenge that, using concepts that aren't too foreign to your casual viewer. Because I don't know if you could get a Star Wars show greenlit that focuses on dinosaurs with guns powered by stolen souls, or a Jedi falling in love with a tree, or a green Bugs Bunny, or a sentient crying mountain, which are all from the old canon except for one. So I'll pitch something that has enough familiar elements while simultaneously being bold enough to take risks. Now then, let's get started. We'll break this down into a few sections. The setting, the characters, the plot, and then a summary to wrap things up. Let's kick things off with the setting. We're in the Old Republic, at an intermediate time before the glory of Lord Jar Jar. We'll fly to the Outer Rim for this one, to a sector relatively removed from galactic politics. 4 locations of note here. Skira, which is a developed planet that has a lot of city infrastructure. Think Coruscant, but less in your face. Taith, same as Skira, but mostly desert. Raishi, basically Naboo, or Earth. Sunfire Station, which is, and I know this will be a surprise, a space station. Onto the characters. Our protagonist is Lanza. He's, let's say, 19 to 21, half human, half some other alien race that can be invented for this. Let's say, Gronky. His Gronky heritage gives him white hair and silver eyes, which will help him stand out. I'm kinda sick of casts in Star Wars being human, but I get it. Aliens are expensive. So here's my compromise. A wig and contacts. Lanza is a mercenary, using a hand blaster that can modify into a short rifle for ranged combat, and a vibrosword for melee. For the uninitiated, vibroswords are, vibrating swords. They can go toe-to-toe with a lightsaber, but they're not gonna cut like one. I think it'd be cool to show Lanza as not being the best shot and preferring close combat. And I also think it'd be cool if Lanza was Force-sensitive. Now I know, you're probably like,
Mr. Rumspinner, you just said you were sick of narrow stories. Star Wars always has some schmuck who learns the ways of the Force.
and to that I say,
Ho, brother, whoa, now. You got too much dip on your chip.
Lanza isn't someone who finds out he's Force-sensitive and trains as the story progresses. He's someone who learned he was Force-sensitive years ago, and he's self-taught. Now, Lanza isn't especially strong in the Force. He's average at best, and that, coupled with his background, will make him different, because he can't just brute force his way through trouble. If he needs to get past guards, he can't just mind trick them. Instead, he'll cast an illusion to distract them. He's not too good at force pushes unless he's pissed, but he is pretty good at catching blaster bolts, because he doesn't have a lightsaber. He doesn't get visions, but he can conceal himself with the Force if he concentrates really hard. Get it? He's not a Jedi or Sith. He's a trickster who doesn't worry about light or dark side. Just survival.
Good. Bad. I'm the guy with the gun.
Next on the list, Vixenti, a 22 to 24-year-old Zeltron. She's a crack shot with a slug thrower, which is a Star Wars gun that shoots bullets instead of lasers. Vixenti is an ace pilot and Lanza's best friend since childhood, with he referring to her as Vix and she referring to him as Lon. Her moral compass skews a little brighter than his, but she's still willing to get her hands dirty. Next, Pyrian Weinarth, 20 to 22, human. She's the princess of Skira, which if you remember is like Coruscant but less aggro. She's naive, but is eager to learn and to help those in need. In battle, she uses a vibrosword and wrist shield, as per her formal training. Next, Kana Junt, 23 to 25, Zabrak. She's a newly ascended Jedi Knight who is questioning her place in both the Jedi Order and galaxy. She wields a double-sided yellow lightsaber, but only as a last resort, to the point of almost being a pacifist. She wants to do right, but often contemplates what right is. Next, Zoli Namo, 28 to 23. She's a human soldier who follows orders. Morally, she saves no room for people she deems evil, executing her form of justice with merciless vigor. She's skilled with all ranged weapons, but prefers a repeating rifle. And finally, Ornok, age unknown. He's a Gendai, which are these big hulking aliens that wear bulky armor. And under his armor is everybody's favorite thing, tentacles. Ornok is our primary antagonist. I'd like him to be a real person instead of CGI, but I understand cost limitations. So I think it'd be cool to cast everyone as short or at most average in height, then cast Ornok as someone very tall to highlight his stature. To save money, he'll only show his tentacles sparingly, as all nasty monsters should. I know I just threw a bunch of knowledge at you, so for your sanity's sake, I'll throw up character reminders when they're up to bat during our plot overview, which we'll dive into right now. We start on Skira, aka Coruscant Light. Episode 1 is a heist. Vix uses comms to lead from the crew's ship, the Mistress. Lanza is on a team of 4, infiltrating a fancy dinner. But it's not at a fancy restaurant, it's at a countryside villa where Skiran royalty and their allies are celebrating. The king has agreed with the Duke of Taith that to avoid impending war, Princess Pyrian will wed the Duke's son in 7 days. Lanza and his team sneak into the party via him posing as a minor noble, and the others posing as his servants. I'd like this section to be full of hints at Lanza's powers. Maybe he uses a suggestion instead of a mind trick to make a guard forfeit an access card, and uses the Force while gambling to make dice fall where he wants. Little things happen that can be written off by both the audience and in-universe characters. Anyway, he manages to get his team into the bowels of the villa. Meanwhile, Jedi Knight Kana Junt and her companion Zoli Namo speak with the royal family, specifically Pyrian Wynarth and her father, about current events. Easy intro to those characters and the background of the story. Back to Lanza, who splits from his 3 companions, despite Vix's overly exaggerated protests. One, let's call him Fracken, follows Lanza. The 2 remaining thieves break into the villa's vault, calling for extraction as they head to the designated rendezvous. Back to the royal family. Pyrian, unenthusiastic about the upcoming marriage, retires to her chambers. Back to Lanza, who warns guards that a heist is occurring in the vault area. He and his partner then use the commotion to head away from the vault to a more heavily guarded area. Then they burst into the princess's chambers, kidnapping her. Vix shows up in the Mistress. Lanza and Fracken take the princess aboard, then abandon the other thieves to their fate, taking off. The pair watch the villa from the cargo ramp. Fracken comments that they'll be able to split the cut 3 ways instead of 5. Lanza just stares. Then he force pushes Fracken off the ship, watching the man fall to his death. And that's how episode 1 ends. Now I wanted to be granular with episode 1, but for the remainder we can do broad strokes. The middle of our show will be about the crew of the Mistress trying to survive while being chased by Kingsmen, bounty hunters, bandits, and a certain warlord we'll get to. On the flip side, I'd like to also have Jedi Knight Kana Junt be a dude Arachnus who also hunts Lanza and his team. She and Zoli will be hot on the Mistress's tail while Ornok, our resident tentacle monster, will try to kill all parties involved. I'd like to keep this story very grounded. We're restricted to this sector of the galaxy. From the Skiran Villa, the crew will head to a hideout in the mountains, then flee to a snow forest on Raishi when things go south. Maybe go to Taith's desert at one point. The main point is that they're always on the run. Lon and Vix have been hired to keep the princess hidden beyond the 7-day deadline, at which point the treaty is null and it's war. So they just need to survive. Pyrian is fully on board. She doesn't want to wed, so she's up for avoiding the marriage by any means necessary. Ornok, on the other hand, doesn't just want the war. He wants the princess dead. During this middle section, we'll learn the source of his hatred. Pyrian's father, the king of Skira, greenlit an operation that eradicated Ornok's tribe to steal its land. Our crew will visit said taken land at some point, which is on Raishi, and get the backstory as we do. Anyway, Around 3/4 through the show, a major confrontation will happen between our main cast, except Ornok. During it, Kana pushes for peace, but Zoli insists on battle, attacking. When Zoli almost kills Vix, Lanza snaps, tapping into the dark side to force crush Zoli's chest before passing out. While Kana tries to resuscitate a dead Zoli, the crew of the Mistress flees, getting away once again. This will drive Kana into even more self-doubt, as she considers whether her peaceful stance is worth it, and if the crew of the Mistress deserves mercy. While she wrestles with that, Pyrian will wrestle with her own morality. During this journey, she'll see a lot of suffering her family has wrought, specifically with Ornok's clan, but also in Lanza and Vixenti's backstories, which consist of them growing up in the slums. Just as Kana reconsiders her stance, Pyrian will also consider what she wants to stand for, as she grows closer to the crew of the Mistress and learns more about the world beyond her castle. Later, we learn who hired Lan and Vix in the first place. Pyrian's brother, the Prince. Unlike his father, he wants war, intending to conquer Taith without any sort of concession. But he's been discovered by the king, who gives our heroes a counter-offer. Deliver the princess to his men, and he'll pay double what his son would've. In response, despite Pyrian's hesitance, Lanza says,
yes!
Our final confrontation is on Sunfire Station. The drop-off is interrupted by Ornok and his men, who raid the station. Despite the battle initially being three-sided due to Kana hunting Lanza and Vix, the Jedi eventually sides with the crew of the Mistress against their shared enemy. While Vix gets Princess Pyrian to safety, Lanza and Kana face Ornok 2-on-1, with Ornok eventually shedding his armor to give us the tentacles we've been asking for. The Jedi and Thief manage to finally best their foe by trapping Ornok in a trash compactor, ejecting him into the sun. Kana has an opportunity to finish off Lanza then, since he's hanging off a catwalk, because of course the final battle has a catwalk. But instead she rescues him. When asked why, she decides that even if it's not what Zoli would have wanted, it's what she does. After all, she's a protector of everyone, even people who don't deserve it. When Lanza asks if that means she'll let him go, she says,
No.
Our epilogue begins with a surprise. Princess Pyrian agrees to the wedding. After seeing the world beyond her castle, she's decided that she wants to change things, specifically as recompense for her father's sins and brother's bloodlust. And the most effective route to do so is from the top. At Vixenti's request, Pyrian also convinces her father to release Lanza from imprisonment. However, neither he or Vix are getting paid, and he's only released into Kana's care. The knight plans to bring him before the Jedi Council, who will decide what to do with him. We close with Vixenti and a new crew gathered in the Mistress. She's planning a heist, telling her boys that there's temporarily stored funds to be stolen from a Republic refueling outpost nearby. When one guy mentions that a Jedi just landed there, Vix says she knows, and not to worry, as neither the Jedi or her prisoner is their target. Then she grins. That's the end of that. Now let's get into a quick summary. First things first, you'll notice the stakes for the story are, in the grand scheme of things, fairly low. There's no Sith Lord, no Death Star, no plot to resurrect Palpatine. We're in a corner of the galaxy where an isolated war might happen. Intentionally. I want this story to be about something that matters most to the characters in it, not to the galaxy as a whole, or a movie years in the future. In that same vein, I wanted these characters to feel differently. Lanza isn't just Han Solo version 6. He's actually bad. His compass swings towards evil most of the time, especially if Vix isn't involved. Kana isn't a super wise Jedi. She struggles with her convictions and questions herself. Pyrian isn't a hyper-competent princess. She's naive. She tries to run from her quote-unquote duty, which I'll let you decide if that's selfish or not. I wanted these characters to be different enough that audiences say, oh, this feels new, while also not being so foreign that producers say, too risky, do the same thing again, since that seems to be how it works. We take baby steps into the unknown, until one day I can get my techno-organic religious warrior cult beyond Outer Rim alien invaders story. Even if these characters or story would change in the final product, I'd say the foundation of this idea would at least hopefully lead to something cool. Because it's easy to write something good, But after going through producers and other writers and directors and actors, the execution is much harder. But the stronger the concept, the smoother the road. Anyway, that's all I've got for this one. Like and subscribe for more content like this, because I've got pitches, rewrites, and essays coming down the pipeline in the near future. Until then, though, cheers.